Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. A judge has ruled that the man who killed a Muslim family in London committed terrorism. We have the details on that tonight. Plus, calls to change the name of the new school in Kingsville is growing, but the board says they're unlikely to budge. And a Windsor singer is releasing a TikTok-friendly album. We tell you what that means. The convicted killer of 4 members of a Muslim family in London was sentenced to life in prison today. The judge also ruled that Veltman's actions in June 2021 constituted terrorism as defined under Canadian law. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick has more.
It was the decision loved ones of the Afzal family and members of London's Muslim community were hoping for. Nathaniel Veltman's crimes amounted to terrorism. That's according to Justice Renee Pomerantz. She delivered the ruling in front of a full courtroom as part of Veltman's final sentencing hearing. Pomerantz said it was an inescapable conclusion that Veltman committed a terrorist act and that one might go so far as to characterize this as a textbook example of terrorist activity. She described his crimes as brutal, vile, and cruel, and said he wanted to not only kill the Afzal family, but to commit a crime against all Muslims by threatening their sense of safety and security. Pomerantz said she knows the trial was painful for many, but hopes the denunciation of Veltman's actions will assist their healing journey. Family members said they don't know if the ruling represents justice or closure. For them, the healing journey is still a long road ahead, they said.
There are so many people who will daily go through some element of June 6th, that their closure is not possible. What is possible is to channel June 6th into positive change.
Relatives said they will honor their loved ones by fighting against Islamophobia. Canada's special representative on combating Islamophobia said she's relieved by the ruling.
Today's decision sends a very strong message that Muslims in Canada must be protected against ideologically motivated violent extremism. It affirms that targeted, heinous, and hate-motivated attacks like this one are acts of terrorism, and perpetrators will and must face the full extent of the law.
This was the first case where prosecutors argued in front of a jury that murders were motivated by white nationalism and that the crimes amounted to terrorism. The designation does not impact Veltman's sentence, but it could influence the programs he's offered in prison and be a factor if he applies for parole. Veltman was sentenced today to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years for the murders of Yumna, who was just 15 years old, her parents, Mediha and Salman's mother, Talat. The 23-year-old was also sentenced to life in prison for the attempted murder of the little boy who survived. He was 9 years old at the time. He's been left an orphan and has serious injuries. Veltman's defense lawyers say they're awaiting a decision from their client on whether he wants to appeal the convictions. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, London.
The discontent over the name of a new school in Kingsville is growing. From student organizers to a former mayor, community members are making it known they aren't happy about Erie Migration Academy, and more specifically, how that decision came to be. Tonight, the trustee who put forward that suggestion is speaking out. CBC's Dawson Chen has that story.
When Public School Board trustee Julia Burgess proposed the name of Kingsville's new kindergarten to grade 12 school, she said she anticipated backlash. Now, 48 hours later, grassroots community groups are taking action.
We planned a walkout because we felt that the decision made by the board for our new school's name was made unfairly. So our main goal at the walkout is just to have a reconsideration of the vote. We're getting a bunch of students to leave school after lunch, and we're just going to meet in front of the school, and then we're walking on the sidewalks of town just back and forth to show the public and the community that we care about this issue.
The student walkout at Kingsville District High School is set to happen at 11:45 tomorrow morning. Along with that protest, there are now 2 online petitions demanding that the naming decision be revisited. One of those petitions had collected 750 signatures as of Thursday afternoon. Among the petition supporters, former Kingsville Mayor Nelson Santos, who feels the school board disregarded the input of the community's naming committee.
The process was abandoned. The community members, the volunteers that served on the committee, the youth, the students, they were basically ignored. And the unfortunate part is it was a political decision, and it was actually kind of underhanded.
Reached Thursday, Trustee Burgess acknowledged the community's feedback, but said a change of the name is unlikely.
I can't see it being revisited. You would, any kind of motion for reconsideration would be, at this point, I think, out of order. There's no reason for it. So we'll listen to everybody's howls, but there would have to be something awfully compelling. And since we've adhered to our own policy, our own regulation, it's been open, transparent. This is it.
Erie Migration Academy will serve more than 1,700 students. The process of naming the school involved a 24-member committee with representation from young students. Over 600 submissions were reviewed, and the committee settled on two options: Kingsville District Academy or Greater Kingsville Academy. Neither option was accepted by Burgess and the board on Tuesday. Now community members aren't holding back in their criticism of the decision.
Erie Migration was not a name that was discussed. They didn't get to have a back and forth about that name.
It's just a blatant disrespect for the members of the community that sat on this committee.
Very much a sneaky move, I feel, on Julia Burgess's part.
But Burgess told CBC Windsor the committee's voices were duly considered.
To have committee recommendations come forward and then not be adopted can instantly feel like it's being ignored, but they're not ignored. They are listened to. They are deliberated on. They are considered. They're weighed with other things.
Erie Migration Academy is set to open in September. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
A former United Way of Chatham-Kent employee has been charged with defrauding the organization of just over $300,000. Chatham-Kent police say a 48-year-old woman from Tilbury was arrested earlier this month. This after what they call a thorough investigation of records between October 2021 and October of 2022. The woman has been charged with one count of fraud over $5,000. United Way of Chatham-Kent declined an interview request, but previously said in a statement an employee was no longer with the organization and the matter had been turned over to the police at the time. Now, the University of Windsor is starting a new study into distracted driving, hoping to impact public safety in a positive way.
Although there's been a lot of research on measuring the risks associated with talking on a cell phone or texting, there hasn't been a lot of research on doing like field studies, like observing what areas driver distraction is more common. And actually, the little data that is available show that the closer you get to school zones, the higher the prevalence of distraction.
The study will focus on identifying where distracted driving happens most in Windsor and the types of behaviors of those behind the wheel. It will also look at the gender and age of people spotted driving with their cell phones. The Windsor Police Service will provide staff expertise to the university's study. It's being funded by a grant of nearly $25,000 from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. Windsor Police says it hopes the study could help in crafting preventative measures to deal with distracted driving. Developers in this province deny that they're fueling the housing crisis by sitting on land. It's the latest twist in the debate over what's driving up the cost to buy or rent a home. CBC's senior reporter at Queen's Park, Mike Crawley, has the story.
It's now 2 years into the Ford government's 10-year plan for 1.5 million new homes to be built in Ontario. So far, new home construction remains well off the pace needed to hit that target. Housing starts hit a record high in 2022, then fell back in 2023, both years well short of the annual target of 150,000. Forecasts predict even fewer housing starts this year.
Interest rates have had a significant impact on housing sales and therefore housing starts. It's an unfortunate period of time that is beyond the control of the industry.
Two of the biggest players in Ontario's housing industry are out with a report rejecting claims that developers wait too long to get shovels in the ground once projects are approved.
We had to dispel a myth that the industry was not operating at capacity. We were sitting on supply. The statistics speak volumes.
The stats that developers want to highlight: the number of new homes completed last year and the number currently under construction, both at 3-decade highs.
Really, the industry is working at maximum capacity or close to maximum capacity at this point.
Some municipal leaders want more powers to try to spur construction of stalled projects, known as use it or lose it. The province is considering it.
I've heard from municipalities across the province, frankly, that this has become a problem in some circumstances.
The industry is pushing back.
I think that the narrative that developers and home builders are sitting on lots, while it may be politically expedient, is damaging.
Across Ontario, municipalities have given all necessary approvals for construction to begin on some 330,000 homes. Today's report from the industry says that number is not unreasonably high.
There's really no incentive for developers or home builders to sit on supply. If they're sitting on supply, it's either because it's not selling and it's not in demand, or it's in a location that's not in demand.
The Premier announced today that the government's latest housing action plan will come next month. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Public health units are reminding families to make sure their measles vaccines are up to date. That's after the province's chief medical officer warned of potential measles outbreaks, especially with March break coming up and increased travel outside Canada. Lorenda Redekop has more.
Toronto Public Health has been offering immunization clinics recently, including for measles. Pre-pandemic, the health unit says it reported around 5 measles cases a year. This year, they're expecting a rise.
We could see, dozens even of cases.
This week, the province's chief medical officer sent public health units a memo warning of potential outbreaks, mentioning the situation in Europe, which reported an alarming 30-fold rise recently, though vaccination rates are lower there. Today, a reminder from the health minister.
To keep those vaccines updated, it is really important to keep, most importantly, our children safe.
Toronto Public Health says here, while measles vaccination rates are normally above 90%, many children have fallen behind since the pandemic and not had their second dose at around age 4 to be fully protected.
When we look at our 7-year-olds, only about half of 7-year-olds have updated vaccinations according to our records. And so that is the gap there. We know that in a setting like a daycare or a school, measles can spread rapidly, and it will find those really who are not protected.
Pediatricians say the lower uptake isn't usually vaccine hesitance, but goes back to people staying away during COVID.
When we see kids regularly in the clinic, we often remind them, the next visit is in 3 months or is in 6 months or is a year. But if they missed that one and it was, 4 or 5 years ago, they may not be kind of clued in that they need to make another appointment.
She says while most people recover from measles within about a week, some can get more seriously ill.
There's the risk of pneumonia and other problems like that. So it's best to avoid it when we can, of course, and we never know who's the most at risk.
Opposition parties say this latest public health concern should be a reminder for the province.
We have a government that has reduced funding for public health in the province of Ontario, that does not value public health until we are actually struck again with an emergency.
The public health units need to have the capacity and funding in order to be able to respond. And what I'm hearing across the board is that they do not have that capacity.
There is some good news with the only reported Toronto measles case. Toronto Public Health says the infant is now out of hospital and is at home recovering. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
The Ontario Provincial Police say they have seized hundreds of illegal guns that were destined for the GTA. It was all part of a joint investigation conducted by multiple police forces in both Canada and the U.S. The CBC's Greg Ross has all the details.
These are just some of the illegal guns seized as part of an investigation the OPP have dubbed Project Saxum.
The focus of Project Saxum was to infiltrate a group of individuals who were seeking to traffic firearms in the Greater Toronto area.
According to the OPP, undercover officers infiltrated 5 criminal networks involved in trafficking of these firearms from the United States. 16 people have been arrested, and the OPP are still searching for one more suspect.
Project Saxum resulted in the seizure of a total of 106 illegal firearms, some of which were loaded.
Illegal firearms like these are used in violent crimes such as robberies, carjackings, home invasions, intimidation, extortion, and homicides.
The OPP says that the 106 firearms confiscated marked the largest seizure of handguns and assault-style rifles in the province's history. Investigators have also seized large quantities of drugs.
Several of the accused were also trafficking illicit drugs. Leading up to the execution of the search warrants, officers were able to seize a total of 23 kilograms of methamphetamine and 1 kilogram of fentanyl.
The OPP also seized around $70,000 in cash, as well as more than 100 other weapons and illegal devices.
The potential street value of the illicit drugs and illegal firearms seized in Ontario is approximately $3.25 million.
With the help of Homeland Security in the United States, they were able to determine that the guns were obtained in Florida before being smuggled over the border in the Niagara region.
Additional undercover activity resulted in multiple enforcement operations in the United States and led to the collective seizure of approximately 168 firearms that were ultimately destined for Canada.
In total, 274 guns were seized and approximately 1,700 rounds of ammunition. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
TikTok has become a popular way for artists to share their music. A Windsor singer says the social media platform influenced her newest album, dropping at midnight. It was recorded in Boston, but funded by Windsorites. Melody Grace, also known as Willowbrook, is behind the album titled Eden. Windsor Morning host Amy Dodge spoke to her about creating TikTok-friendly music.
It is very folk. I would say it's more folk than any other stuff I have out right now. The last song on the EP is actually like straight up bluegrass. It's super fun. I'm very excited.
Now, you have an impressive following on TikTok. How important would you say TikTok has become in getting your music heard by more people?
It is virtually the only reason I have any amount of streams. I had, a song that kind of got some attention on TikTok, and that's Sweet Diana. That's, the one with the most streams right now. It's kind of just the only thing right now as an independent musician to get heard by multiple people.
A few days of spring-like weather, a few at seasonal temperatures. That's the roller coaster we continue to be on. We have your full weather forecast coming up after the break. Colette, another warm day here in Windsor, and it hasn't just fooled me what time of the year it is, but I'm noticing it's maybe fooled some of the plants. I'm seeing a lot of green shoots popping up in the garden.
Yeah, and I've seen a little bit of that too. And you know, sometimes that happens and then we get, you know, a hard freeze and it's a big problem. We do have some colder air coming, Meg, but it's pretty short-lived. That I don't know. We may be getting near the end of this winter, at least some real extremes. So let's not get ahead of ourselves, but I'm going to break it all down for you in terms of what we're seeing. Just some of the daytime highs. It's been cool the last couple of days in Ottawa, and finally today, even a warm up there in the nation's capital, 7. I know 9 for Windsor, not as warm as a little bit further to the east. However, there was a lot of cloud cover there and a little bit of afternoon sunshine for southwestern Ontario kind of poking through, which was nice. The current temperatures cooler for Chatham-Kent and closer to the lake there for Goderich and Sarnia, but Windsor holding on at 8 degrees here. This is the Arctic air, though, that's to the north. So this is a shot of what we'll feel more winter-like when this gets here. And when does that happen? Well, how about tomorrow night into Saturday? So Saturday temperature is a real departure, but it's relatively short in terms of this cold spell, so maybe it won't have too much of an impact on any of those little shoots coming out of the ground, because then you can see by Sunday the temperatures are starting to reverse again and head in another pattern of climbing towards perhaps double digits again by the time we get into the early part of next week. So that system moves on. Now along the cold front, that's to the north, that Arctic front, there is a little bit of snow activity you can see there. As that cold air filters in, we may get the odd little sprinkle or even a wet flurry from time to time. And so looking at that kind of as we go into Friday, but especially overnight, Friday into Saturday morning. I'll walk you through that, but I do just want to show you still some of the cloud cover here for that closer look. And then we move forward with this. And the other thing to keep in mind will be the winds. So there's that Arctic front to the north. Much of it does dry up, but it doesn't mean we won't get a little bit of a light mix and pretty isolated, nothing to be concerned about. There's that chance again overnight Friday into Saturday morning. And so that kind of remains with us until we should be clearing out more as we get into our Saturday, a little deeper into our Saturday. Those winds, though, as that front passes, yes, some of the winds may gust up to close to 50 kilometers an hour at times tomorrow through the afternoon hours, and that's going to certainly feel very different than what it's felt like the last couple of days. So overnight temperatures down around freezing, a little below, just a little bit above, and then there is that 5-day forecast. So you can take heart that warm air will come back. Short-lived Saturday cool air, and there's that climb, so that by the beginning of next week, yes, we may be going right back up there into that territory.
Wildly jarring forecast, Colette. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome, Meg.
Sly as a fox is how the saying goes, and we have video proof. That story coming up. Stay tuned. International tech experts and advocates are sounding the alarm about AI-generated videos, images, and voices that can be mistaken as real. Sam Sampson reports.
This is fake.
Which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time.
This is also fake.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real.
Deepfakes look real, but they're non-consensual AI-generated material. Now, this open letter from hundreds of experts urges governments globally to take immediate action against deepfakes and those who spread them, suggesting criminal penalties for creators of harmful AI-generated content, such as child pornography, and repercussions for tech companies who don't prevent their tools from being used. Many worry how that fake content could have real implications on elections in more than 50 countries this year, like this fake robocall.
Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again.
It sounds like President Joe Biden telling voters to stay home for the New Hampshire primary last month, but it wasn't him.
For the first time, the technology to create very compelling deepfakes is available not just to sophisticated state actors, but to individuals. That's just a warning of what we're about to see, which I think of as a tsunami of disinformation.
In Canada, 8 provinces have intimate image protection laws, meaning victims whose images are shared without their consent can sue for damages in civil court. But only half of those include altered images like deepfakes. Ottawa is actively working on AI laws, but they might not pass until this fall at the earliest.
Responsible government needs to be ready.
This AI governance advocate wants Canada to get ahead of the problem, not react to it.
As easy as it is to make a deepfake, we need to make it as easy as it is to take them to account for it.
Experts say rely on your critical thinking to spot deepfakes. If a video or an image gets a big reaction out of you, pause, consider what it's telling you, where it might be coming from. Asking questions, they say, is going to be key as AI gets better at distorting reality. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Regina.
You may have heard this saying, sly as a fox, and one little critter is living up to that expression. This is a video of a fox cunningly snatching an animal rescue worker in England's phone. All this while the worker was tending to another injured fox nearby. A dizzying ride through nearby bushes ensued before the thief unceremoniously dropped the phone. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.